Welcome everyone to another edition of Gavin Reshaw Presents here on channel Gbutu 786 on Facebook and on we have my other self-entitled channel, Gavin Reshaw. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you are blessed and doing safe. And we have a special guest on. He is the host of Real Talk with the G-Man, uh, Bishop Gerald Scott, which is on Blog Talk Radio. Is that right, Bishop?
That is correct.
That is correct. And if you guys also know Bishop Scott, he has thrown his voice into commentary as well as I have with the Judge Joe Brown show, which is hosted by Valerie Denise Jones on Friday, which is actually going on right now. Because I got the invite from Valerie. She sends me the flyers all the time. I'm sure she sends them to you too,
Oh
Bishop.
yes, yes, I received
Uh,
them.
yeah, but we were here doing this show because I wanted to have the bishop on just about different things that are on this week. But Bishop, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? You're based out of Philadelphia, is that correct?
That is correct. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I've been preaching for quite a while. Started preaching when I was 12 years old. I'll be 69 next month, so that gives you an idea how long I've been preaching. I was a pastor for many years, so over 20 years, in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the AME Church, and I've been very involved. I've been a school teacher in history, and my minor and major were history and political science at Temple University. I'm just happy to be on the show today. My show is Real Talk with the G-Man, prime time. In fact, I have many shows, but the one generally that we're about politics is prime time on Wednesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Every Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time on Blog Talk Radio.
Correct. And do you have a way that people can contact you? Is there
Yes, on Facebook, you can contact me,
something way to reach out?
Gerald Scott on Facebook. Simple as that. You'll see me in my Bishop regalia, so you'll see the picture of me. You'll say, "Oh, there he is. That's him." I'm on Twitter, and I forget now the Twitter name, but I think it's Bishop GW Scott. And then I'm also on Instagram. I think again, Bishop GW Scott.
Okay. Bishop G.W. Scott, yes. Do you have a cash app? Anybody can do donations or?
Yes, yes. That's thank you. Cash App at G. William Scott. What was it? Let me hold on a second. I give it to you right in a second. Just give me 1 second. Just to
All right. While Bishop Scott is looking for his cash app, why don't we take this opportunity to just welcome everyone to the channel. You can also donate to my platform at the ticker at the bottom, Cash App Gavin Reshaw Esquire, or Google Pay at gavin.grich1@gmail.com. Shout out to brothers Bernard and brothers Ron Herb. I saw that they are actually this Judge Joe Brown and a few others. So a great meeting with the guys from
yes,
all. Yes,
Mr. Gavin, Brother Gavin,
yes,
I'm
Bishop, I'm
back
here.
with you. I can't hear you now. Let me see what happened.
You got to turn the audio on.
The voice.
You got to turn your mic on.
I'm not hearing you now. I'm seeing you, but I don't hear you.
Okay, you got to.
Okay. Can
I
you hear
can.
me?
Yes,
I can't hear you. Let me see what happened here. Let's see.
my mic is on.
Hmm. That's weird. Let me check.
If we can hear you loud and clear.
Mic is on. So I don't know. I don't know. Anything's working on my end. I don't see anything off.
Yes.
Let me see. Can
Can you turn your volume up?
Yeah, I don't see what's wrong.
Is your
I can.
volume up?
Let me see. Let me see. Let me do that. Let me.
All right. So having a few issues with the bishop. Let's try and see if we can get it Let me invite him again. So that might be a way that I can handle that. All right, Bishop.
Yes, I'm back on, and I hear you now clearly.
Sometimes you gotta log back in and out. That's the way that it may work or will
Yeah,
work
that's what I
better.
used to do. So I
Yeah,
got it. Something told me just turn it off, turn it back on real quick. That's what I did. So that's good.
right. So without further ado, Bishop, I think we get started and just talk about what's been happen this week. Of course, we have the vice presidential debates that were this past Wednesday.
Yeah.
I had brother Sean James on. Do you want to give, I guess, your analysis of the debate? What you thought of it?
Well, I mean, on both sides, I felt that no one really dealt with the issues that were posed to them. Every time you talked about one thing, they would bring up another thing that they wanted to talk about, and I saw that happening time and time again. I was kind of, a little bit perturbed, a little bit about uh, Senator Kamala Harris's attitude a little bit. She had a little, like a prima donna type of attitude in my mind. She was very, I guess I wouldn't say, well, I would say hostile in some regards, dignified, classified, classy, hostile, but not really, not hostile in a sense of being mean spirited. But I mean, her approach was a little bit condescending in some regards. I felt, but some things were brought up that I thought should have been addressed, like the inclusion of the how many Supreme Court justices they would like to add. I understand that Biden was asked again today, and he said he's not going to say his opinion on the matter until after the election, because he thought that it would be everyone would be talking about it, which I thought was kind of curious. Certainly, if he talks about stacking the Supreme Court with additional justices, I think that would be worth talking about. I don't see why he wouldn't answer for that reason. Overall, I think some things were revealed. I knew that Pence would go to the Trump line, and he did, trying to promote his president. So that didn't
Right.
surprise me. Some of the things that Kamala said was somewhat disgenerous. Wasn't genuine enough for me. Uh, Ingenuine, and so I thought overall it was, I guess, a little more courteous than the presidential in terms of it not being loud and rude, but in terms of information and exactly what they're going to be standing
No, it was
for,
opposite of last week.
it was opposite of last week in terms of tone, certainly. In terms of information, I don't know how much more I got out of them. I mean, I would not, to me, I would not be swayed either way if I was on either side of the fence, or if I was even standing in the middle as an independent, or as one not committed one way or the other. I don't think I
Yeah.
would really be able to say which side I would really agree with.
Well, would it be? Are you a independent, Bishop?
I would say that I've always been a Democrat. In the last election, I voted independent. I voted for I'll say, the Green Party candidate, Jill Stein, and I'm leaning that way this year. To be honest with you, I'm leaning that way this year as well. But traditionally, from 1972, with George McGovern until Barack Obama's second term, I was a Democrat, and I still am a registered Democrat.
What did you think? Because recently there was, I've seen Michelle Obama. She's come up with ads to try to get Joe Biden to vote. A couple of months ago, they've been talking about how they were upset that people, and she was hinting at black people, blaming on black people who didn't vote for Hillary Clinton the last time, and basically putting Donald Trump in office. How do you feel in regards to the Obama legacy?
Well, I'm not an Obama fan, to be honest with you. I believe he was overrated. I believe that the black community had a hands off, don't speak anything negative about him. I think that he gave the black Americans nothing. I mean, he improved a lot of lives in this country. Native Americans, he gave reparations to. Former descendants of Holocaust victims, he gave reparations to. He improved the lives of LGBT community, and also really brought about this DACA, this Dreamer, and pushed for all of that. But in terms of African American lives, he's made it very clear. He believed that reparations would be divisive for African Americans, yet he supported and actually pushed through and got done reparations for Native Americans. He didn't feel as though that would be an insult to us. In fact, I'm sure he didn't even consider us in the equation. He just did what he thought was right. But it seems like every time someone wants to do something for African Americans, it's always, well, I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't want to. We've been here for 401 years. We've been so offended, so maligned, so abused, so mistreated, so ostracized, without no one caring about it. But someone says anything about helping us or doing something exclusively for us, Biden's position has been very clear. He said, I will not agree to any reparations that did not include Native Americans. Kamala Harris was very clear when she was asked by a black journalist, what do you think about doing things that would benefit the black community? And she said very clear, if you're asking me, will I do anything to benefit only the black community? I say no.
Well, she didn't say it like that. She said, I'm not going to do anything that just benefits that solely benefits black people. No.
Exactly. I mean, well, yeah.
I'm not going to do anything that just benefits. But she has approved, and I've looked at this, and I did a video on it. She's approving H-1B for H-1B visas of Indian immigrants.
Right. That's her people.
She's approving them. There's plans about Dreamers. They talked about the Dreamers earlier this week. You have, and I had Reverend Kennard Childress on my platform this past Tuesday. I don't know if you saw it, Bishop Scott. You didn't. Well, we talked about the impact of abortion on the black community, but I mentioned how the numbers of the black community are not reproducing at a growth rate that other races are. They're not reproducing at that level. And I noticed that in the year 2065, it was reported by The Guardian that there are actually going to be more Asian Americans will outnumber Black Americans, and Black people will be at the bottom class. It would be blacks, it would be whites, then Asians in terms of from lowest to highest. In terms of population, we'd still be at 12.5, 13%.
And the way they're going, I doubt if it's going to be that much. The way that we intermingle, the way we're in prison, the way the homosexual community has drawn many of us into it, abortions, so many things are going to. I believe that I don't think we're going to maintain a 13 or 14% ratio. I don't think we're going to be 12% ratio. Yeah, and I read the same data as well. By 2065, we're going to be the least of all the minorities. We already are in terms of how we're treated. We've always been that. But now, population-wise, we're going to be added to the numbers to a lesser number than even Asians. And at this time, we're above them. But it won't be long. The Latino Hispanic community has already outnumbered us, and the way that they want to do it is they're going to outnumber us by a whole lot. If the Democratic Party has anything to do with it, they really are pushing for that. And with Kamala Harris as vice president and presumptive next candidate for the presidency in the Democratic Party, just like you're saying, Asian Americans in particular, Indians will also increase in numbers significantly. And already, we are still on the bottom of the barrel when it comes to power, when it comes to prestige, when it comes to influence and financial economic status. We are at the bottom.
You guys can see here when this says continue to joebiden.com. This is the Biden campaign website. Together we'll beat Donald Trump. One of the way that the Democrats, unfortunately, and they have not learned their lesson from 2016, is that they have continued. I don't know if you guys can see the screen, or can you?
Yeah, I can see it. I'm sure.
But this is what I was talking about. This is a plan for the Indian American community. They want to form a strong friendship between India and the United States. A group that you never really hear of during the election season, Bishop. They have the lowest voter turnout among Asian groups. They vote the least in every election. And Connie Chung, the former CBS anchor woman, CBS Nightly News, she just recently did an ad trying to urge Asian Americans to get out and vote, which is something I've rarely seen before. So I'm just curious now that they're doing all of this pandering to these different groups. It's just basically a way to the lesson
But you know
that the
the curious
Democrats have
thing that I
learned is you
find,
can't just base things on.
but you know the curious thing that I find that even though she's promoting in the Democratic Party or courting more aggressively the Latino in the Asian, in particular Indian community and Native Americans as well, they're so, I believe they believe that they have us so much in their pocket, that they take us so much for granted that they no longer even have fear of us leaving the party in any great numbers. And historically, we haven't since, I would say, the 1960s, certainly. And we can even argue back to the days of Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the 1930s, but it certainly took on a real flavor in the 1960s under Lyndon Johnson and Jack Kennedy, as far as that's concerned, John Kennedy as
As
well. And we're staunch. That's 60 years ago. You talk about the 60s, we're in the 2020s. So we're staunch. I mean, you can talk about Biden all you want to. They're not. That our people for the main aren't swayed by that. You can talk about Hillary, and you can bring up things about Hillary. In 2016, we stayed true. Over 80% of us voted for Hillary. You can talk about Obama, and people still are insulted, still are, she's the best first lady. They have a program on now in CNN that's talking about all the first ladies that ever have lived in
well,
this
she's got
country, in
a
particular the last
podcast.
few.
She has a Netflix special. She has a podcast. She has all of those things, and everybody's,
Yeah,
my mom is still interested in it. I'm like, why are y'all so interested in people that didn't care anything about you when they were in office? I think, some of this stuff could have been prevented when we're talking about these police shootings. Had
and
the
to
Department of
me,
Barack Obama made any type of, yeah, well, wait, let me finish the point. Had they
yeah,
arrested, right, the men that killed Eric Garner, that choked him out, which was an illegal chokehold, they could have set a precedent uh, to prevent further police shootings. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. But we get this lecturing to that we complained about when we talked about Bill Cosby because we didn't like the fact that he airs out our dirty laundry and talks down to us. But here, Barack Obama has done it multiple times.
all the time. He still does it. He did it during the
Yeah,
Democratic National Convention. He did it during the Democratic National Convention this year. Once again, talking down. You better go out. They lecture us like we're children and they're our parents. He and Michelle both. They lecture us about what we should and should not do, and if we don't do it, then we're not really American. What has these elections really benefited the black community? What have they done?
very little. But
Have our lives, really, to be honest with you, I look at it this way, because I try to be fair, but I look at it this way. Has the average American, African American, ADOS life significantly changed during Barack Obama, and has it significantly changed since Donald Trump? What has changed for us? You can go all the way back, and what has really changed for us? The same fight, the same talking points that they talked about way back in Frederick Douglass's time, way back in Nat Turner's time, way back then, are the same talking points that we're talking about right now in 2020. The very same things. If you would close your eyes and listen to those earlier heroes of our race, and hear what the topics were and the issues were back then, you would swear you're talking about now. Police brutality. That's as old as the first policeman that was organized to capture slaves. The same mentality, beating up Bull Connor. I remember looking at that. Bull Connor there in Alabama, sicking dolls on us. And that's not nothing new either. So the things that we're talking about that the press wants to lead us to believe has happened during the 4 years of Donald Trump is very, very misleading.
well, I
In fact,
think
it's
you
hypocritical.
hit the
In fact,
money,
it's a lie.
right? Well, you hit the nail on the head because certainly I think they know that the black vote not only is taken for granted, but it's useless at this point. Uh, and I'm saying that for this reason. It's useless to a degree because they know that the United States is becoming a majority, is going to be a majority people of color country. And the black community, as we said earlier, is seeing declining numbers. Their numbers have not moved up. So they cater to the immigrants who keep coming over here, because especially the undocumented workers, they're going to give them amnesty and benefits that they have not even earned. And by that, I mean, black people built this country for nothing. We were slaves. Our ancestors were
Yeah,
slaves. So we have always tried to feel a part of the American dream despite being mistreated. And that's even putting it mildly. When you look at the wars that were fought in this country, from the American Revolution to the American Indian Wars, to from the Civil War all the way to World War II, black people played a role in those roles as well. And so, even despite all of that, we never got our full just due. And we see immigrants coming over here who, as Dr. Claude Anderson even talks about, they come to earn and they come over here and get unearned benefits. And what Dr. Anderson is saying is that they come off the backs of black people, because you notice what the Civil Rights Act did, which was passed in the 60s. As you remember, Bishop Scott,
hmm
you may remember, Lyndon Johnson specifically stated that affirmative action in the Civil Rights Act was to help the Negroes in this country. But of course, with amendments that have been passed, you have
well.
women's being, the Title IX, women being added to that. You recently had LGBTQ, transgender people that are being added to that, which is not even, to me, it's not a predisposition. That's not a race. That's sexuality, that's sexual orientation and gender identity. They're adding all of those things in, and it waters down the movement.
I agree with you. I mean, you're right. I mean, the statistics show that the group that is benefited most, in particular in the present day, from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 65, and all the rest of them, have been white women. White women have benefited more from what was meant to be. And I remember when Lyndon Johnson said this. I remember the college he said it at. He was asked the question, and at that time, he made it perfectly clear that the whole it was to make things equal. It was to make things equitable and bring black folk up from a place
Mhm.
that they were in to a better place. And we talk about welfare and all of that. They benefit from all of that too, for the most part. And that was intended, once again, as a hand up. It wasn't supposed to be a handout. It wasn't supposed to be a perpetual thing. When I was coming along as a boy, and I saw people, even in my own family, that had welfare and all of this, they had cash dollars and welfare stamps. In those days, they had the stamps, and it was meant to bring you to a place when you will be economically solvent. It wasn't meant to be you and your grandmother and your great grandmother and your great great grandmother and your children are all on the same system. That was not the intention. But I believe it is the intention of the government to keep us in a place where we are submissive, to keep us in a place where we are dependent, to keep us in a place where we have to keep quiet to a certain extent because our lives depend on their quote generosity, unquote. We're still in a slave system,
They're
and we're
talking
still to
about,
their slaves.
yeah, they're talking about here. Biden will spur public-private investment through a small business opportunity plan that will fund successful state and local investment initiatives and make permanent the highly effective new markets tax credit, expand access to low-interest business loans, and eliminate barriers to technical assistance and advisory services by investing in a national network of cost-free business incubators and innovation hubs. This is in regards to the committed. He says Biden is committed to a stronger, more inclusive middle class. This is in regards to the fact that they say here, quote, many Indian Americans are small business owners, entrepreneurs, and inventors. This is the plan. Now, you look at his Lift Every Voice plan that he has with Black America. It's a whole bunch of do about nothing. A whole bunch of do about nothing,
And when I looked at when I read
because it's
that,
the same old as
brother Gavin, when I read that, it didn't become substantive until it included people of color. When it became superlative, when it became important to note, when it became significant, was when they began to refer no longer to black folk, but people of color. Then we see some substance in it, because it doesn't have any substance when it only refers to us. It only has substance to it when the other groups can benefit from it. That's when it has some kind of substance. And if you look at it, you'll see, oh, okay, now as soon as they use the word people of color, now we see some kind of real plan, real program to improve the lives of people of color. I tell folk all the time, we're on the bottom rung. So if everybody moves up, we're going to stay on the bottom rung.
Yeah, most
If I'm on the
definitely.
bottom and you're on ladder one, if you're on step one and I'm on the ground floor, you step up to two and I get on one, who's still on the bottom?
We are. Bishop, I wanted to, why I reached out to you too, because I've been a lot, and you were very critical of the late Elijah Cummings and even John Lewis, because you feel that they didn't really do a lot as politicians in their area that they represented. Why do you think we stay loyal? And you talked about it briefly, but where does the loyalty to the Democrats come from, and we just keep doing it over and over again?
Uh, well, I think we remember the days of Lyndon Johnson, the days of the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King. It's interesting to note that Martin Luther King was not a Democrat. Martin Luther King was not a Democrat. He was actually a Republican who had high criticism, in particular during his latter years of public life. He had high criticism for the moderates. He felt the moderates were like in the Bible talks about those that stand on the other side were just as bad as the enemy that I'm fighting, because they did nothing to help me. So you see all the injustice done, and you stand there watch it. You're not participating, but you're watching it, where you could do something to help those who need the help the most. You just stand there and watch the injustice being done. So he was saying that in terms of the moderates. No, they may not lynch you. No, they may not bar you from the counter of a restaurant. No, they may not do this and that, but they allow it. They're quiet. They're that solid majority that say nothing, though they know what's being done is injustice, is biased, is cruel and inhuman. But they just keep their mouths shut and let things go on. I believe that's the same with the Black Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, every one of them,
Yeah.
save for a very, very few. I would say none of them fight the way they should fight. I look at AOC, I look at Omar, I look at how they fight for their people. They go out and they fight hard. AOC, she fights hard for the Latino community. Omar fights hard for immigrants and for Muslims. They fight hard. There's no compromising. There's
He's
no.
grossly incompetent, though. He's incompetent. From what people have told me, people in New York I've interviewed, they don't really care for him.
But I'm saying, but at least even if it's nothing more than rhetoric, what do we do in terms of even rhetoric? What does Maxine say? She talks about immigrants. Oh yeah, they talk about them. They talk about everybody but us. That's what they don't even talk about us. And if they don't talk about us, who is? If they don't fight for us, who is? If they don't stand in the halls of Congress and at least spill out the smeal, even if they don't do nothing, they're quiet. They don't say anything. If anything, what I know, James Claiborne, the congressman from South Carolina, he made it clear he don't believe in reparations. Most of them didn't until very, very recently. Most of them did not sign on to it, until very recently. And so they don't even want to study the thing. And here you are, ADOS, ask yourself, you're ADOS yourself. And yet, I know Clyburn he's a slave, a former slave ancestors. They all had slave ancestors for the most part, but they don't want to even deal with it because the party doesn't deal with it. And I'm glad what you said when you said, and why do we keep on reelecting them back into office time and time and time again? Because we're so brainwashed into this. The Republicans are bad, the Democrats are good, and so even the parties themselves say, vote for the lesser of two evils. I mean, that's our choice from now on. Lesser of two evils. Neither one of them going to do you no good. But choose the one you think is going to do you the least harm. What kind of system is this? Where we go to the polls to vote for somebody who's not going to hurt us as bad as the other one will. They're both going to hurt you. Neither one of them going to do nothing for you. But which one do you think will do the least for you? That's you vote for the other one.
Well, I had Dr. Randy Short on, and he said the least of two evils, the one that's not going to harm you was Trump. And I said, why would you say that? He said, well, you look at Joe Biden's record.
Yep.
He said, Joe Biden's record speaks for itself. He says for 47 years, he was responsible for putting more black men in prison than any other senator, any other politician. His rhetoric that is documented is racist, especially when it came to school busing and integrating schools.
His mentors were all Southern segregationists.
James Eastland and
Strom Thurmond. He spoke at his funeral.
Yeah, he eulogized Strom Thurmond. Yeah.
All of them. Right. You can just name them all. The one in Arkansas, Furbus. All of them were his mentors. They were his advisors. They're the ones who helped him with the bus situation. They agreed with him completely and helped him finagle his shamil. They helped him with the crime bill. He's the architect of the crime bill. And he once stood up in the Senate and said, there's no crime bill that's ever been written that my name's not on it. And he was proudly proclaiming that.
Right. He's doubled back down on that crime bill, even at the debate that he was in when Trump even mentioned it. Mm-hmm. He's doubled down on it, saying it didn't cause the rise in incarceration.
Right.
It says how the Black Caucus was actually in favor of it, which I don't doubt that they were.
I don't either. That don't surprise me either. It doesn't surprise me some black preachers were, because I was during that time, and I know some of them were for that. But you see, a lot of people, even some of the senators and all of them, what they do. And I'm gonna say this, brother Gavin. I'm gonna say this. What they do, and I find it so offensive, is they put things in that are worthy. Like it was called Violence Against Women Act. It was put in that bill to quiet, because everybody agrees with that. Domestic brutality and domestic abuse and all of that. Everybody agrees that is a travesty. So you sneak that into this bill, and you harp on that, and you stress that, and you kind of minimize this real thing that's going to affect more people than affects the others. And so I just think it's all a game, and I'm sorry to say we're never going to be the winners in this game. I don't think.
Yeah, well, it certainly looks bad at this point, because I don't think we're doing a lot to combat that. I don't think we do a lot to combat things, and we're too complacent. And the information is there. I mean, we have the internet. We have something that my parents and your generation didn't have in the 70s, and even in the 80s, you didn't have the internet. You could research and stuff is out there, so people can learn about what's going on in the world. These things, especially about Biden. Kamala Harris's record, but people don't care about that. Like, I know people that just want to vote for her because she's an AKA or she went to Howard. Right, I mean, those are superficial things. It's the same thing with the Barack Obamas. We wanted to see the first black president.
That's right.
Michelle looks nice in the dress. The girls are pretty. That's all they think about.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we made no demands. Every other group that Obama was responsible for, every other group made demands before he became president. They made demands before the primary started. If you want our vote, if you want our support, this is what we're gonna ask of you. We're the only ones that said nothing. We were just so proud as punch that this mixed race. We didn't even stress that he was just black, forgetting that he wasn't even raised by nobody black. He was raised by everybody, either Indonesian or white. There was nobody in his life on a continuous basis. His daddy left him, went back to Kenya when he was nothing but a boy. wasn't even in 2-digit numbers. He left him about 8 years old. Everybody raised him. His mother raised him. She's white. His grandparents raised him. He himself said in his book his grandfather was a racist. That's what Obama said about his own granddaddy. And then his mother married a second husband, an Indonesian. And in fact, that was his name for a time. It wasn't Barack Obama.
It was Barry Soetoro. I've heard about that.
It
Yeah.
was Barry Soetoro. And so, so to think that he can identify with us, that he has some empathy for us, no. And he made it clear in his inauguration. He said, "I'm not the black president. I'm the president who happens to be black." And that's what his 8 years of.
Yeah, well, I can remember when Barack Obama his campaign was gearing up when he won the primaries. I think the Indiana caucus, and that's really when he took off back in 2008. I was a senior in college,
Okay.
And I'll never forget that, seeing that, and everybody was just excited. You couldn't tell him anything. There was a pastor at the school that I went with. If I had anything critical of Barack Obama, was Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was the architect wrote the book The Grand Chessboard about how to occupy the Middle East and basically control all of the oil that was there. Well, you don't know what you're talking about. You just being a hater. I couldn't tell these Negroes nothing.
You still can't.
You still can't tell them stuff.
Bring up Obama right now. The man hasn't been president for 4 years. Bring his name up right now and see how much backlash you get. If you say anything negative about him or Michelle, please don't do that because you're going to be ostracized.
I've been
called names by my own nephew.
I don't care. Forget them. I'm like Dr. Short said. I'm tired of stupid Negroes.
Right, I am too.
You tell the truth, shame the devil.
Right.
But now you can't do it. I think more and more though, there are people who are starting to wake up because they're looking at what's going on. They look at his record, and honestly, I think Donald, truth be told, how it ties to this election. Remember when they had the press clubs dinner banquet that they had at the White House?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And remember when Barack Obama humiliated Donald Trump?
Yeah, he said all kind of stuff about him. Yeah.
Right. Well, it was funny, but one thing I learned is that one of my others, you never humiliate another man in front of everybody where it destroys his ego like Donald Trump. And
maniac. You don't mess with them. They'll get back at you. They're gonna eat.
Right, and he got back at him by becoming president. And actually, let's look at go back in time.
Mahalo. Thank you, official long form certificate. That puts all that best. But just in case you're in question, tonight I'm prepared to go a step further. Tonight, for the first time, I am releasing my official birth video.
Bishop, can you mute? Oh, hold on. Mute for a second.
I want to make clear to the Fox News table that was a joke. That was not my real. That was a children's cartoon. Yes, I think it is fair to say that when it comes to my presidency, the honeymoon is over. For example, some people now suggest that I'm too professorial, and I'd like to address that head on by assigning all of you some reading that will help you draw your own conclusions. Others say that I'm arrogant, but I found a really great self-help tool for this: my poll numbers. I've even let down my key movie stars. Just the other day, Matt Damon. I love Matt Damon. Love the guy. Matt Damon said he was disappointed in my performance. Well, Matt, I just saw the Adjustment Bureau, so right back at you, buddy. Michelle Bachmann is here, though, I understand, and she is thinking about running for president, which is weird because I hear she was born in Canada. Yes, Michelle, this is how it starts. Is here tonight. Now, I know that
All right, this is it.
he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac? Say what you will about would bring some change to the White House. All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And
Notice Trump is not laughing at all. He's giving a little.
You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
All right. I ain't gonna lie, that was funny. Hold on a second, Bishop. What you were saying?
I was saying,
Bishop?
he's buying his time. But Donald said, okay, he that laughs, so laughs best. And so far,
Yeah, well, he hasn't put the he didn't make the changes to the White House on the outside yet. We don't have the big luxurious White House tower. But that's on its way probably next term if he gets reelected.
Yeah, well, I'll say this: he didn't make it rainbow colored like the Obamas did. He didn't color the White House with the rainbow colors.
Yeah. Do you think he? Yeah. Do you think Trump will win?
Oh, boy, it's a toss up. I really do. I think that Trump is really. I tell you the truth. I really believe that Trump could have made this a shoe-in, because I heard someone say, in fact, it was Jane Fonda, say that the best thing ever happened to the Democrats was the coronavirus, and I know what she means by that because of how it all turned out. But I think that could have been his great triumph if he had done something a few things differently. To me, if Trump would just keep quiet, I mean, if he would just be able to be still on certain things that really prick at the heart of people, I think that he would be better served. I really believe that even now, the economy's climbing back up. Other things are happening in a positive way in spite of this very difficult period that we're living in. And I listened to both he and Pence, and some of the points I thought, I said, well, I wish I was the candidate beside either Kamala or Joe, because there's some things they really could have pressed. For example, he could have pressed, I'm talking about now Trump, could have pressed on the presidential election about the his record in terms of the crime bill. He mentioned it, but then he went on to talk about police in the military. Men love him and all of this. I think you should have kept on pressing that point. Oh yeah, there she is, Jane Fonda. Listen to what she said.
Yeah, let's listen to what she said. But yeah, Jane Fonda.
I just think COVID is God's gift to the left.
I think what she meant by that is to say that this is a gift and opportunity. This is exactly what she said because I talked about this on Wednesday with Brother Bernard. We are people who can help determine which way humanity goes. What a great gift. What a tremendous opportunity. We're just so lucky. We just have to use it, every ounce of intelligence and courage and wherewithal we have. I just think God, COVID is God's gift to the left. That's a terrible thing to say. I think it was a very difficult thing to send down to us, but it has ripped the band-aid off who Trump is and what he stands for and what is being done to average people and working people in this country. But when I listen to that, the problem with Jane's comments is that she treats it as if all of this started with Donald Trump. All of this has been going on even before him. And I think Trump is a reflection, as Judge Joe Brown has said, he represents reality. George Carlin once said why he doesn't vote. He says the public sucks. He doesn't complain because when you get garbage in, you get garbage out. What he's talking about is that the public here in the United States, meaning us, we the people, we vote these people in, and we're gonna getting disappointed in the same results because we are bad. That's essentially what he was saying. I think Trump. I don't think necessarily all people are bad, and the public in general, but I think to some degree our culture, our society uh, is been corrupted. It is certainly cracked. The foundation of America and what it was founded on and their principles, which was, of course, it was founded on there was racial bigotry and prejudice that was built in off of that, and it was also founded on blood. So KRS once even said himself that you'll never get justice on stolen land. But I don't think that I can't say that all of this started with Donald Trump, and I understand. I guess James' point is that this was an opportunity for them to really close and win this election. But I think it has shades of John Kerry versus George Bush from 2004. People were saying the same thing, and George Bush ended up winning that election.
Yes, he did.
Although he possibly
But once
cheated.
again, but we know how George won it. I mean, his brother Jeb was the governor of Florida. His best friend was the
Yeah, well, that
governor
was
of
against Gore,
Ohio,
and
and a lot
that
of
was in
things were done.
2000. Yeah.
But let me say this. I like what Pence said, and I think it was really ignored in the debate. He said because she was trying to compare. He was trying to say about the incident because this is not the first pandemic in recent times. There was a pandemic during the Obama and Biden era too, and she was trying to make it sound that so many more died now than then. But Pence made it very clear, and he did it with a scientific view. He said that the strain of the virus then was not near about as potent as the virus this time. He said that if it had happened today, that virus is as bad as that virus is today, then there would be millions that would have died. It was not as potent as the other virus. That's number one. And number two, if Trump would have just done and allowed the Trump and the Republicans and the Democrats, for that matter, would have just allowed the stimulus package and other things that have really helped Americans out to be your epitaph, if you want to put it like that, or your standard bearer, or your keystone, or your foundation. You wouldn't have to say anything about whether you think it's no better than the flu, or you don't think it's no worse than the flu, or whatever. If you would I'm gonna tell you the truth. If Trump would allow his work to speak for him instead of speaking for himself, used to be an old hymn. Let the work I done speak for me. Let the work I've done speak for me. Because I'm going to tell you the truth. If to be honest with you, and I'm not no Trump fan. There's a lot of things that I have a problem with Trump on. But I believe that if Trump would allow his work, what he actually has done for this country, to be his mouthpiece, and he just be still and let it stand for him, he'd be in a much better straits. He would be a shoo-in my humble estimation. He'd be a shoo-in because there's no president I've ever known in my history that gave every American $1,200 and many more than that. If you count the children and this and that and the dependents and all of that, some people got as much as $3,000, $4,000. If you would have had that, people still getting extra food stamps every month. If you would allow those things, Trump, extended when the Congress refused to expand the eviction, the mandate on evictions. He expanded it. He extended it to December of this year. If he would do that and just allow his work to speak for him, and then to push it on the Congress. Congress loves pushing things on him. But if he would allow himself to enable himself to start pushing back a little bit and letting the folk know that if these folk care so much for you, why are they going into their 6th recess? They're on recess right now until after the election. Then they go on a recess again during Thanksgiving. Then they go on a recess again during Christmas and don't come back to the first of the year. This is what your Congress is doing. And people, they keep on talking about he's the worst president in modern times. He's a habitual liar. Well, what does that say about you, that you leave the government in the hands of someone you think is a habitual liar and the worst president in modern history? What does that say about you?
Well, George, I was telling Brother Bernard and Brother Ron Hurd, the president that holds the record for me as the worst president, just being from New Orleans and dealing with Katrina. I can't ignore and forget what happened there. Of course, people look at, I think, the situation with Trump, just all the bad stuff that has happened. They say he's a racist and the things he's done and said, from Charlottesville to the even before that with the Central Park 5 incident. Although something interesting that was brought up by Dr. Randy Shore, Black people even back then thought they were guilty. And their parents, even and Angela Stanton King, who's running for John Lewis's seat in Georgia.
In Baltimore. In Baltimore.
Yeah, no, she's running in Atlanta.
Oh, yeah, in Georgia. Right. That's
Georgia.
Right. That's right.
Right. She's running in Georgia. She even stated that you're thinking of someone else. I know who you're talking
other girl, yeah.
But she even said that, the parents even thought that the kids were guilty. Nobody letting his son plead guilty to something he knew his son didn't commit, which is that's an interesting point too. But we've had racist presidents before, though.
Well, the founder of the Democratic Party, Andrew Jackson, had owned slaves, and he's the one that sent the Native American on that, what they call the Trail of Tears, with millions of Native Americans dying. So your very first president that was a Democrat in 1828, when the Democratic Party was established, he won the election. He was the first Democratic president. He himself was a slave owner, who records show he was a cruel slave owner, as if any of them were good. But I mean, he was an exceptionally bad one. And he also led millions of Native Americans to their death. So you're talking about racist. I would think that's kind of racist. I think I think that Woodrow Wilson, when he said the birth of a nation was the great, he didn't say it like this, I'm paraphrasing, but what he meant was it's the greatest movie. It was an historical movie that was like a lightning flat. Now I am quoting now, lightning flashing through the sky. That was another Democrat.
You had Andrew Johnson. You had Andrew Johnson who rescinded the Special Field Order 45, which was given by William Tecumseh Sherman. He was the general of the army that gave reparations to blacks after the Civil War. The 40 acres and a mule came from that. He rescinded that order. He's arguably considered the worst president in history. You have Richard Nixon. You had even Lyndon Johnson, who's on audio tape calling Dr. King nigger. I mean, he's Ronald Reagan. There was an audio tape released earlier this year where he called some African delegates when he was California governor monkeys. So there's always been racist presidents. And it's about what a man does for you too. And I look at every other ethnic group in this country, the things that Donald Trump has said and done, they still, like in the Hispanic community, they still support him from all intents, just going on the polls. He got over 66%. 66%, according to Telemundo, said they felt he won the debate. You have the Puerto Rico governor actually endorsed Donald Trump's
This
bid
week.
this week, and that was because Trump
Yep.
approved or was approving some money that was to go to Puerto Rico, somewhere in the billions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. And you got to look at this too, Brother Gavin, that Trump, unlike his predecessors, both Democrat and Republican, he's kept us out of wars. In fact, he's diminished wars. I mean, when Obama came into the presidency, George Bush left him Iraq and Afghanistan. When Obama left, there were 7 other wars that were already going on. Now we're down to back to 2 now major ones, and I heard just this week that Trump has said that all troops will be pulled out of Afghanistan by the end of the year. So this is what he's done. You know, sometimes we pay attention to what someone says more than what they do. And I think the Democrats love to show you, well, look, I mean, we say the right things and we do it the right way, and we're not like a bull in a china closet. We have finesse about us, and this is how we talk, and this is what we do, and all this. No, I'm gonna listen to what you do and more than what you say, because you don't do much or nothing. You say a lot, but you don't do much or nothing. So you know, that's how I see it. You know, yeah, Trump is, like I said before, Trump would be a shoo-in. If Trump would keep them like with the immigrants and all the things he says does not reflect on the thing he's done. When Obama came in there, he froze any help to the historically black colleges and universities. He froze the monies that George W. Bush allocated to them. And yet, when Trump came in, he increased it for the next 10 years. Most of the historically black colleges are pretty much taken care of in terms of what the government can do for them. But so we talk about his rhetoric, but then we ignore that. We ignore the fact that blacks are working now. We ignore the fact that certain things are being done now for African Americans. He talks his talk, but he doesn't walk. It's weird because he's the opposite. He doesn't walk his walk that he talks. Everybody else talks the walk that they can't talk, and they can't walk.
Well, Trump is actually, a lot of people don't notice, he's actually an independent. He ran as a Democrat. He started off as a Democrat early in his career, and he only switched to Republican so that he could secure the Republican nomination.
Right. Well, I'm going to ask you this.
See, he was an independent for a while as well.
I want to ask you this. Just reverse this, because the last 2 most popular candidates that either party has given us has been both populist and not Democrat or Republican. In fact, you can say the same thing about Bernie Sanders. He's an independent senator from Vermont. He's not a Democratic senator from Vermont. And yet, time and time again, the Democrats have rallied against him and really stole the nomination from him. Do you think that Trump would have had that same problem in the Democratic Party that Bernie had? It has.
I couldn't hear what you were asking.
Oh, okay. What I was asking is, Bernie and Trump can be considered populist. Both of them are populist, and they're really not party men. Just like with Trump, Bernie Sanders, he's an independent. He's not a Democratic senator from Vermont.
Right.
He's the independent candidate from senator from Vermont, and he's been at other third party parties as well, members of other third parties. Do you think that Trump would have had a harder time in the Democratic Party being a populist, and like Bernie Sanders has? And
I think Trump. Well, that's why he switched over. Well, that's why he switched over, because it's also about name recognition too. Because at that time, if he, I don't think he would have been president at the time the Clintons were in office. I don't think he could have. I don't think he was going to run then. And he was buddy with all those guys. He was still a Democrat, so he wasn't going to run against his friends. I mean, there are pictures of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and Bill Clinton together. So that's no secret.
Oh, yeah.
All of that stuff that they do in public, that's all for the show. So
right.
I think that he would not have. No, I don't think he would have ran as he would have won if he had ran as a Democrat. You know, that's why he switched over to the Republican nomination, and he appeals to his base. You know, he's the only president that I have seen. I can say this: he doesn't throw his base under the bus.
That's true.
He doesn't throw. You know, he hasn't thrown those white supremacists like the Proud Boy. You know, and the Proud Boys, and you know, he hasn't thrown them under the bus. You know, I had Reverend Childers on. He was like, "Well, who knows where the Proud Boys started, and so forth like that. They could be government funded. They could be Democrats for all we know. But I don't even know that either. I just look at what's going on in the world, and all we can go on is what the information we have. But yeah, he's not throwing them under the bus, and I noticed that he is, you know, the minute he got in office, one thing I can say, another thing I can say too, is that he started at least putting his agenda at work.
Yeah,
You know, he didn't wait till the Congress to do stuff. He started signing executive orders.
right
Boom,
away.
right away, right away. You know, we couldn't get that with the predecessor.
No,
We
no,
could not get
because
that with Barack Obama.
the one
Yeah.
thing I think the Democrats are more establishment than Republicans are. I really do. I think they are entrenched in what they believe. I think they're warmongers who claim they're not, but they are. Most of the major wars we've been in of late have been wars that have been perpetrated by the Democrats for the most part. Beginning with the Korean War. Who was president? Really, all the way back to, well, of course, I don't count World War II because there's so many factors there. But let's talk about the Korean War.
Well, the
Korean
war in
was started
Iraq,
by
that was
who?
Bush.
By a Democrat. You know, the major wars we've ever had. The Korean War, the Vietnam War, you know, have all been perpetuated. Now we know the Iraqi War. That was Republican for the most part. Well, it was all Republican. They lied
Right.
to us.
But I mean, Nixon, I mean, the Vietnam War started when Johnson was on his way out of office, but Nixon had ramped everything up.
Well, the Vietnam War actually started with John Kennedy, actually with Eisenhower, in terms of sending people there. They weren't. Now, what happened was Johnson escalated when he dropped those bombs. Nixon just went haywire. He just made it a full-fledged, almost a world war.
Well, the Gulf of Tonkin incident was when we had, well, with Kennedy, and a lot of people speculate this is why he was killed. He was actually pulling the troops out at that time because we had advisors in Vietnam. We didn't have soldiers. And
Right.
he approved removing them. And a couple of days after his, the day of his funeral, Lyndon Johnson reversed that order. And the Gulf of Tonkin incident happened in '65, and that's when the war picked up. And that was in '65. And then after that, subsequently, you had Johnson said he was not going to seek re-election. Bobby Kennedy was supposed to become the nominee, but Bobby Kennedy gets assassinated, and Nixon secures the White House.
And in between that, you had Martin Luther King was assassinated. Now, keep in mind, I like what you said there, because both of those persons became against the war. You know, and everybody looked like against the war ended up either dead or in jail. You know, they stripped Muhammad Ali of his title. They killed, naturally you say, Bobby, and they killed Martin Luther King when they were staunch against the war. They were anti-war. They were anti Vietnam War. They were staunch anti-Vietnam War people. And of course, a couple other things that Martin did that they didn't like either. But when he stood against his quote unquote friend, that's what everybody thought he was to him, Johnson, then the gloves were off. The gloves were off then. And we know the history of both men. Bobby killed in Los Angeles and King killed in Tennessee, in Memphis.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I certainly, well, all of those were connected in some way, shape, or form. There certainly was a conspiracy. I don't believe that Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK. It's not a matter of I don't believe. I know he didn't do it, as is James Earl Ray. And even with Sirhan Sirhan, that situation seemed weird as well. So Malcolm X being assassinated, all four of those big individuals, Kennedy's, that was all part of. They all were opponents of the Vietnam War, which was interesting. And that all had happened under Lyndon Johnson's watch, which was
That's true. Every one of them. Every one of them.
Interesting thing. Yeah.
Right, because Johnson was doing all
right.
the assassinations. Because he didn't become not president until January in '69. That's when Nixon was inaugurated. So all during that time, all those people died under the presidency of Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah. Well, last topic I want to get in with you, Bishop, being that you are in Philadelphia, it has been confirmed that on December 1st, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is set to hear the case against Bill Cosby. Hear his appeal. Cosby is appealing his 10-year sentence that was handed down by Judge William O'Neill back in September of 2018. Cosby was convicted on 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault at the age of, he was about 80 years old at that time, and he's now 82 years old. It says, once revered as America's dad, Cosby was accused of supplying his love interest, Andrea Constand, with 1.5 Benadryl tablets and then digitally penetrating her at his home in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. Testimony and a controversial civil deposition, a document that the High Court cited and granted the appeal, pointing to a months-long love affair between Cosby and Constand. Although both have admitted that there was never any intercourse. Cosby has maintained his innocence, and in his only jailhouse interview, Cosby told the black press that he would never plead guilty to false charges. I was there, Cosby said in a November 2019 interview. I don't care what group of people come along and talk about this when they weren't there. They don't know. Essentially, what they are appealing is the use of this deposition that was used against him, where he was granted immunity by the former district attorney, Bruce Castor.
Right.
Current district attorney is Kevin Steele, who ended up using a deposition against Cosby and ran a really horrible-style campaign, I might add, that he would get Bill Cosby if elected prosecutor of Montgomery County. So you're up there in Pennsylvania, Bishop Scott. I don't know if you've ever followed this story, but you could tell us, I guess, a little bit about your thoughts on this whole thing.
Well, I mean, my thoughts have always been suspicious. I mean, naturally, Cosby's from Philadelphia, lived here for many years, went to Temple University, and he's an icon in the entertainment field, certainly. He's been a champion during the civil rights movement. Him and Sidney Poitier and others were champions during the civil rights movement. Once again, it's a case of he got a little too much power for the lacking of those in power. And when they feel threatened to the point of feeling that you're pressing too hard, they press back even harder. And my problem is the fact that many of these cases that were brought up were people with their own dubious backgrounds. And number two, I always have a problem when people talk about, well, he invited me to his room at 3:00 in the morning, and I went up in his room, and this happened and that happened and another thing happened. I always have a problem with that because my problem is the fact that why would you go up to a hotel room or even into the room in his home when you know he's a married man at 2 or 3:00 in the morning? I have a problem with that. Then you cry 20 years later, foul play, foul play, foul play. And in one case, I think you told me and reminded me of it, I've forgotten about it, that one of the victims, quote unquote, but I use it very loosely, was actually had invited them to things and was very pleasant toward him.
Well, it was more than one.
Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned that. So
more than one
idea, if I'm so,
didn't make sense.
If I'm so taken aback, if I'm so insulted, so compromised, so up in arms about what you've done to me, I would have nothing to do with you, nothing, let alone invite you to things, call you up, keep in communication with you for what? There's no reason for that. So I think many of them are crying wolf after the fact because once again, it's a man who has a lot of money still. And the reputation, he has a great reputation, worldwide, I guess literally worldwide notoriety. And you get your names in print. Some of them are disgruntled entertainers themselves. And so
Right.
now you are a part of this. So I think a lot of it's a much ado about nothing. A lot of it.
Well, yeah. Well, I know people. I've never. I know of people uh, that know him and have been in the industry. And the main thing that I have with it, especially with that story, I heard that he ended up paying this woman $4 million. This thing was already settled. I didn't see why they went and reopened it, but even if you have an affair with someone, that doesn't constitute, if they've tried to make it with this Me Too movement, that if you have an affair with a woman and she later regrets it, she has sex with a man, doesn't get her way, she can go and cry rape.
Right.
And black men in particular have always been the victims of stuff like this.
That's right.
So I don't know why he was cheating on his wife like that, especially with somebody who looked like that. But a few of them
You're
weren't
right.
on
No,
this.
right.
But
And look, compared to Camilla is a beautiful woman, both then and now.
Camille,
Camille, yes, I mean Camille is both a
yeah,
beautiful woman then and now. So his wife is a beautiful woman. And certainly when, during the time, some of these times, 20, 30 years, she was gorgeous, in terms of her beauty. So, but you never know people's taste or whatever. But
well, and I
I just
mean,
respect
even having
everybody.
affairs. Well, yeah, but I mean, even when you have affairs, like Frank Sinatra's wife even said after he died sometime that she knew Frank attracted women because he's Frank Sinatra.
Right, right.
And she never had a problem with it because she knew women were going to flock with him. So she didn't get angry at hearing him having all of these affairs and so forth because she knew it was him. Mia Farrow, it's been rumored that Dylan Farrow is actually Frank's son because he actually looks like a young Frank Sinatra. But
Okay.
as she even said herself, she never stopped seeing him, uh, technically. So somebody like that who has that type of recognition and that power, like a Sinatra, it's not a surprise that he has mistresses. Same thing with a Dean Martin or Sammy Davis Jr. And here, even with Bill Cosby, what's interesting too is that one of those women that was allowed to testify, and that is another issue. She actually was an escaped fugitive from justice. A lot of people don't know that.
I didn't know that. I didn't know
She
that.
had a bench warrant for her arrest, but she was allowed to fly in from Arizona because that's where the warrant is issued. She flies in with Gloria Allred, I'm presuming because Gloria Allred
Oh
was out
yeah,
there with all of
yeah.
these women. Yeah, and she's able to give testimony in court that she was assaulted. She actually asked Bill Cosby a question in court, which should have been grounds for a mistrial. The judge denied that. The whole case was just one big hot mess and should never have been heard to begin with.
But it's part of the course. I mean, like you said earlier before, all these things have a history to them. I mean, black men. What happened to Emmett Till? You know, he whistled or looked at a woman and a white woman in a way that they thought was insulting and da 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 da. Next thing you know that boy's beaten to the end of, well, his life. He died. He was beaten to death.
Right.
I
Well, he
mean,
was
beaten.
killed. Yeah.
I
He
mean,
got
for looking at a woman, for winking at a woman, for whispering at a woman. Come on, I mean, so that's just as old as time, and we have to remember before we jump into the fray in condemning our own. We have to remember our history, and I'm not excusing anybody from doing anything that's wrong. If it's wrong, it's wrong. I don't care, black, white, whoever you are, it's wrong. But sometime before we rush to judgment so quickly, on the side of those who are not our friends, who have abused us, have betrayed us, have denied us our rights, and we ready to jump on their side against our own. Just pause for a minute and remember the history of our people. And I think you're absolutely right. We really don't know much of the history of our people, or we forget it, or we choose not to remember it. Many blacks say we talk about slavery too much. We talk about those days too much. We should just forget about it. And I think about my Jewish brothers and sisters who still celebrate the Passover, which is the exodus from Egypt out of slavery 4,000 years ago. They still celebrate the Holocaust almost 80 years ago. And we're told, and we're still in the same situation. We're not in a better situation. It's not like now we are now in a good situation here in this country, and our people now are equal to everybody else economically. I think you were one of the ones said in my program. You said, how many years would it take for us to even be, if we would even get a little bit of something? How long would it be for us to actually be equal to the dominant society? For us to be economically solvent to the point of being, okay, now we've arrived. We don't have to fight anymore.
Right. Well,
Like
it's
you said, it would take
interesting.
decades or scores of years, and for us to even,
Right.
none of us
Yeah.
probably be alive. That would have happened.
JP Morgan Chase, it was announced earlier today that they dedicated, uh, I believe, somewhere around $13 billion for the fight to improve the racial wealth gap, which I find very interesting that it was JP Morgan. It was actually 30 billion. It was reported by Dr. Boyce Watkins. They've committed to that, but it's interesting. I'd have to read more up on it exactly. What does that pertain to? Because you can give those things to different causes and so forth, but how does that actually affect the community? I can give money to historically black colleges, which is great. Yes, that helps keep the schools afloat, but how's that serving the community as a whole in
Yeah,
general?
yeah, yeah.
You know, but that was interesting, yeah. But I'm actually going to say this here. They say this is from the Wall Street Journal. Bishop, let me cut your mic off because it's creating a lot of static. Hold on.
Okay.
All right. So this is from J.P. Morgan Chase. I just want to share this, guys, with you all. Just let me know what you think. This will be our last topic for the day. Let's see here. So they said it would extend billions of dollars in additional loans to Black and Latino homeowners and small business owners in a push to narrow America's racial wealth gap. The bank, America's largest, says it is committing a total of $30 billion over 5 years to the effort, which focuses heavily on expanding access to affordable housing as well as boosting minority-owned small business. Now, when you say minority-owned, that's a red flag. Now, even with Biden's people of color, and even in Donald Trump's platinum plan for Black America, where he talked about minority. Anybody, as we stated earlier, Bishop, could be a minority. A lesbian Jewish woman is a minority. Even though she may be white, she's considered a minority. Now, this is a good effort, I guess, if you want to say that much. But I'm just reading more into it. We're not finished yet. It says here, JP Morgan joins a list of companies that have thrown their financial support behind racial justice efforts in the months since a Minneapolis police officer killed George Floyd, sparking a wave of protests throughout the United States. Still, the 30 billion pledge represents a fraction of JP Morgan's 3.2 trillion in assets. The bank had almost 190 billion in home loans on its balance sheet as of June. Systemic racism is a tragic part of America's history. Chief Executive James Diamond said in a statement, "We can do more and do better to break down systems that have propagated racism and widespread economic inequality." And with that, Bishop, I'll let you have the floor.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What I hear is you're absolutely right. It's weird how it's really not. I guess I use the word weird, but it is interesting to note. I'll put it like that. How we'll use the image of a black man or a black woman, but we always refer to the help in terms of minority, people of color, other little signals that let the other folk know. Don't think we're just dealing. We're putting this black man up or this black woman up as the poster child. But in fact, they're not going to be the only ones that will receive any benefits from it. And let me tell you the truth, they're going to be the least because we're only one of the POCs. We're only one of the minorities. When you talk about the people of color, you talk about Latinos. How many Latinos are from different countries? How many Latinos represent different cultures, different this, different that? Even different races for that matter. Even when you talk about documents, you'll say Hispanics with no white or Hispanics with white heritage, that kind of thing. So when you're talking about benefits and things that help and all of that, they may put a little figure up there. They'll quote, "Well, just because of George Floyd." Let me tell you something. Not many George Floyd types will get benefits from this. He's just the face. He's just the face to let us think everything's all right. See, we get ready to do something for you guys. But they signal to others by saying minorities, people of color, to let them know you're in this thing too, baby. Don't worry about it. We got you covered.
Yeah, I certainly think it's going to be. I'm interested in seeing where that goes exactly. When you talk about economic inequality and helping small business owners, because I've applied for loans lots of times before with Chase, and I've been declined. So uh, I'll see what they do now. That'll be interesting. I don't think the George Floyd types appeal to this thing, but we'll see what.
They're not going to be
I,
the targets. They're not going to be the target. The average black
might
person
be Indian Americans might be the talkers too. They're going in line with Kamala and Biden.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes.
Yeah.
And like I said before, they already are. They already are in a certain position already with small businesses. I live on a street that runs. If we go from Broad Street all the way to the end of the street, which is like 10 blocks, if you go from one end to the other, there's only one black store, and that's a Jamaican store.
Yeah.
All the stores on this block, and I'm talking about maybe 20 or 30 stores, one is black, and that's Jamaican. All the others are either Indian, Pakistan, or Latinos.
Right.
Only one store and all of that. Ain't no African American black on nothing. Yet we buy from these stores every single day. They leave there.
Right. Well, they've mastered.
We got 2 Chinese stores. You gotta have one of them,
They have mastered basically how to use their funding, how to use our communities and neighborhoods to build their equity and capital, and they send it overseas to their family members and their parties. And we have, their gas stations, their grocery stores are in our communities, and we can't open our own. We can't even get ones for our own. We can't even, we keep spending our money with them, and some of these people hate us.
Oh yeah.
Too. A lot of these people will not let you even use their bathroom.
Exactly. No. They'll look at you and they'll follow you throughout the store. If you go in the store, they're watching you every step you take, baby.
I've had that happen to me.
They're watching you.
Right. Well, Bishop,
they're in your neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, Bishop, why don't you let everybody know what you got coming up next?
Well, we have a show on next Wednesday, naturally, at 6 p.m. Blog Talk Radio. We'll talk with the G-Man Prime Time. We have quite a bit to talk about. I want to talk about the Black Agenda, and I want to pin that down, what we want to include in our Black Agenda to make ourselves clear about what we're talking about, what we really are demanding. Sometimes we can be kind of vague. We don't really stress certain things, but not everything. So I want to really talk about that. Every week is something different, so I know there'll be another topic of current event breaking news that'll happen on next week as well. So whatever current events will be talked about, we'll discuss it. And of course, we're going to be dealing with the Black Agenda and exactly what all of that means. Time is moving quickly. We know that the next presidential event debate is going to be October the 15th. So that may be a little bit of our topic in terms of getting ready for it. What can we discuss? There's always something going on in this country, particularly in 2012, 20. So we know that there'll be a lot to talk about on Wednesday night. So I invite you, Gavin, as always, and your guests and your viewers to tune in to Blog Talk Radio. We'll talk with the G-Man, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The call number is 515-602-9655.
Real talk with the G-Man. And Pastor, Bishop, where do you preach out of?
Well, right now we're not preaching out of anywhere. We're closed. Our group is closed. but we are in Philadelphia. We're in North Philadelphia. 18th and Diamond is our location, and we do have services here at the house. Bible studies mainly here at 1810 West Susquehanna Avenue here in the city of Philadelphia.
Well, I just was trying to ask what was the name of the church you
had. The name of the church is All Are Welcome.
Okay, all are welcome in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And you are welcome to come back to this platform anytime.
Thank you, sir.
Bishop Scott, I'm privileged that you came on, and I'm grateful that you made this a great weekend, a great conversation. So you have a great weekend and be blessed, sir.
And thank you for the invitation, and look forward to seeing you real soon. And you be blessed.
Yes.
Stay safe, my friend. Stay safe.
Will do. You too. Are you going to call into Judge Joe Brown to see what they're talking about?
To see what they're talking about. You only got about half more hour, but I want to at least tune in and see what.
Probably longer than that because it's like a 3 hours.
You're right. You're right. They got the overflow time. The overflow time, I call it.
Yeah. And Bernard doesn't make it any shorter. So with that was a shout out to him. I know he's watching, Brother Bernard. So with that being said, guys, this has been another edition of Gavin Reshaw Presents here on my channel, GBoo2786. Support our friend and brother, Bishop Gerald Scott, and his Cash App, G. William Scott. And also support me at my Cash App, Gavin Reshaw Esquire. That's the Cash App, or Google Pay at gavin.gwrich1@gmail.com. That has been it.
Brother, Gavin, I just make a correction. It's G. William. It's G. William, $ G. William 67. G. William 67.
Oh, okay. Let me correct that. G. William 67.
WM. G. William WM 67. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Right. No problem. How's that? That's your Cash App?
That's it. That's what it is.
That is his Cash App. That is the Cash App. And Bishop, thank you again for joining me, and happy birthday to your mother as well. This is her 90th birthday.
91st, 91.
91st birthday this past week. So shout out to her. And with that, guys, I ask you guys to tune in next time. Tune in to Real Men, to the Real Talk with the G-Man and Prime Time with Bishop Scott on Blog Talk Radio this Wednesday at 6 p.m. That's Eastern time, right?
Right.
6 p.m. Eastern time. And you guys will tune in with me. We've had 4 live streams this week to do. So we've had Reverend Childers, we've had Brother Bernard, we had Sean James, and today we had Bishop Scott. So I'm grateful that he came on. And you guys, that has been it for me. It's been another episode of Gavin Reshaw Presents, only on channel GBoo2786 and Gavin Reshaw, all on YouTube, as well as my Facebook page, Gavin Reshaw. Please subscribe to those channels and please donate. That's the only way we can keep this platform rolling, and also we can expand as well. So you may not see me with the funky green screen back here, but you guys may see me in a new studio eventually. That's the dream. That's the goal. So you guys, my own studio. So you guys be safe and be blessed. I'll holla. Peace.